You're now listening to the Fullerton Unfiltered podcast. Straightforward, no nonsense business advice. Completely unfiltered. Grow your business. Grow your life. Now, here's your host, Brian Fullerton.
Hey, what's going on, guys? Welcome to another episode of the Fullerton Unfiltered podcast. It's your host, Brian Fullerton here. Hey, guys, want to say a big thank you for jumping on the show today. We have a super special guest and a very timely guest as well, and that is none other than Tom Wheelwright, founder of WealthAbility, one of the Rich Dad advisors as well, and published author of Tax-Free Wealth. Tom, what's going on, brother? Welcome to the show.
Hey, thank you. So busy.
Yes.
Financial crisis going on.
Amen.
So I appreciate you having me on the show because this is really timely.
No, for sure. Well, not only that, I appreciate you taking the time out of your busy day to be on our schedule. You and I were just catching up for a quick minute before we hit record, and I said, "Tom, how's it going out there?" And you said, "Well, the world's burning," you know. So we a lot of things to cover, a lot of opportunity as well. We're going to be talking about taxes. We're going to be talking about some frequently asked questions that I get from my audience, and just if you guys don't know anything about taxes or CPAs or wealth or strategy, this is your guy. Tom is just an amazing dude out there. He's got a lot of success under his belt with trying to advise and helping people advise on how to save money on their taxes. He's got a really popular podcast as well that if you guys enjoy this episode and you want to go down that rabbit hole with Tom, you can check out the WealthAbility podcast. So, Tom, for maybe people that don't know your whole background, why don't you take 30 to 60 seconds and maybe just give everybody kind of your bio about how you got started maybe doing taxes, maybe linked up with Robert, and maybe just take it away from there.
So real quick. So I grew up in a family business, and my dad was a printer. It was a sizable printing company, about 40 employees, and my mother was the controller. And we all worked in the business, and I worked for my mother. So I started doing bookkeeping when I was like 12, and loved it. Ended up going to the University of Utah for a degree in accounting. And while I was there, took some tax classes and absolutely loved the tax classes. It was suggested by my professor, tax professor, I go to graduate school, get a master's of tax. And so I just picked the best one in the world, which is the University of Texas in Austin.
Sure.
Got my master's of accounting with a tax emphasis there. From there, I spent my first few years at Ernst & Young, which was then Ernst & Whinney, so it's been a long time ago.
Mm-hmm.
But I got the opportunity after a couple of years to be in the National Tax Office of Ernst & Young, which that was the last major, prior to 2017, last major tax reform, 1986. So I got to kind of watch the sausage factory and really learned kind of the core. It was like postgraduate education. From there, I transferred out to the Phoenix office where I was in charge of the real estate tax practice in Phoenix. That's where I really got a lot of real estate experience. I then went to a Fortune 500 company to handle their real estate, commercial real estate, and was there for 4 years as the tax advisor, particularly on the real estate side. From there, I went to I did a short stint at Price Waterhouse till they fired me. And like many people, and probably some of your listeners, it was getting fired that got me to start my own job, my own business. And while I was starting my own business, I was approached by Arizona State University to create a class for multi-state income, sales, and use tax. And I taught that in their graduate tax program for 14 years as an adjunct professor. While I was building my CPA firm. And I've actually built a couple of CPA firms and bought and sold CPA firms, and currently have a small CPA firm. We have about 40 clients. You have to have a lot of money to be a client of ours.
Oh yeah.
But what we did under 2 years ago is, as you know, because you're involved in this. We started a network of CPA firms and accounting firms, and we now have 35 members across the country that are networks of our WealthAbility accounting network, and that has proven to be an enormous success. We help accounting firms actually take better care of their clients and create better practices. And that's what we do at WealthAbility Network. And that's become one of our prime businesses. But as you know, I've been with Robert Kiyosaki 2001 is when I met Robert, and I actually became his accountant in 2003. And we've been traveling the world pretty much ever since.
Wow.
And speaking all over the world together. So I've actually been very privileged to do a lot of travel that was just me and Robert.
Sure.
And we've been in Europe and we've been on 6 continents, and it's been just amazing. What's fascinating is every time we're at an event, we're always going to get the same. Somebody's going to say the same thing. They're going to say, you know what, Tom, and they always talk to me because they're afraid of Robert.
Sure.
But
He probably is a little intimidating.
They'll say, you know what, Tom, this is all great stuff, but you can't do that here. And everybody thinks you can't do that here. People are going to say during this crisis, you can't do that now. Okay. And what I'm going to say is, not only can you do it now is the best time to do it. And primarily because reducing your taxes is absolutely the fastest and easiest way to put money in your pocket.
Well, let's just jump right into it, because I have some questions that are going to be just kind of they seem really topical, but they're actually really, really important. And a lot of people have there's a lot of misinformation. There's no education with in traditional schooling typically about finances and accounting and taxes and all these different things. Why do you think that is? I mean, I know these are some of the different ideas that we had wrote down, but why do you think there's no traditional education in the school systems about accounting and finances and taxes?
Well, I'm not a conspiracy theorist, so
Sure.
I'm not going to go down that rabbit hole.
Sure.
What I believe is that I think, people think that a job is safe. And so teachers, they're like the most conservative of all, and they think, oh, well, you should get a job. And so, of course, they're going to tell their students to do what they did, which was to get a safe and secure job. I mean, effectively, teachers have a government job, right? So they're going to tell everybody, get a government job. And teachers are putting money into their 403B, which is the teacher equivalent of a 401k, right? And they're saying, this is what you should do. This is what I do. They don't have any financial education. How could they possibly deliver any financial education? They've never had it themselves. And their idea is what they've been told. We've all been told for many years is, invest in a 401k and save money and invest in a well-diversified portfolio of mutual funds. So that's what I think that's fundamentally wise. They just don't know any different.
Sure.
And they think a job is secure. And here's what I've been thinking about recently. We have all these people unemployed right now, and they're unemployed. And you go, well, wait a minute, you're unemployed. You had a single customer. Why did you think having a single customer was a safe way to earn money? The great thing about you and your audience is you guys have, tens or 20s or hundreds of customers. That's a much safer position to be in than to have a single customer.
Well, and it goes full circle too, because I mean, if you have multiple side hustles or hustles that are multiple businesses or multiple asset classes, you have a little bit more, I wouldn't say security, but more financial independence. I heard somebody say once, and let me know if you think this is true, but the safest place on earth is a maximum security prison cell. But you also don't have a lot of freedom there. And, when I was growing up through school, and this goes full circle to all the Rich Dad books and your books, because you guys always kind of share the same stories, is that it was all security mindset. It was all, just being an employee at best, self-employed. But I was never presented the option of being an investor, let alone a business owner. And that's what our whole audience are. They're small business owners, they're entrepreneurs, they're trying to make some headway. If I can, I wanted to circle back to taxes being like your most expensive bill. A lot of people have said that. A lot of people have heard that. But if you're talking to an owner-operator of a lawn and landscape company who's making $250,000 gross, what do you mean by taxes are your biggest expense in life? Some people just don't understand what that means.
Well, think about it, okay? You may have employees, but in your business, you're probably not paying your employees,, you know, high wages, right? So you've got those expenses. But then you have But typically, as a self-employed person, you're going to pay 30 to 40, even up to 50%.
Mm-hmm.
You're in California, you're paying 50% plus.
Wow.
If you're making a decent income
Mm-hmm.
on your business income.
Mm-hmm.
So, why would you give away half of your money to the government if you didn't have to?
Mm-hmm.
That's really the message, because you don't have to. That's why I always say that the fastest way to put money in your pocket is to reduce your taxes. It's really simple once you understand the concepts we talk about in tax-free wealth.
So what's the difference between avoiding and evasion? Because a lot of people are going to ask that, right? Well, I just feel, you know what I mean, Tom? They're going to go,
5 to 10 years.
Yeah, exactly.
5 to 10. That's the difference.
Yeah,
Evasion's illegal. Evasion is cheating.
Yes.
I'll make it really simple. Evasion is cheating.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. And I'll tell you, a lot of small business owners, and I'm guessing that there are people that are listening that know somebody who's cheating.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. And they may, be looking at themselves, frankly. Okay. I'm just going to be honest. If you don't know how to do something, you tend to cheat. You tend to cut corners. If you're really good at landscaping, for example, you don't have to cut corners.
Mm-hmm.
You can absolutely, take even somebody's trimming trees, right? We have a lot of trees on our property, and we've had tree people who just, they like take a buzzsaw to it.
Mm-hmm.
I literally have a pomegranate tree that a landscaper took all the fruit off of it.
Oh wow. Yeah.
It was full of fruit, and they took all the fruit and threw it away. And I'm going, what the heck? This is my fruit tree, right? And they just trimmed it straight up. I'm going, you know nothing about pomegranate trees. Whereas, somebody else who knows, they know when to trim and how to trim, and it's not going to take them a lot of time, right? Because they know how to do it, right?
Mm-hmm.
And they'll be very successful doing it. So the same is true in any profession, and it's particularly true from a tax standpoint. And the thing is that people think, well, taxes are so complicated. Well, yeah, the details are, and that's why you need a CPA. That's why you need a tax advisor. But the concepts are really simple, really, really simple. Once you have somebody explain them who really understands them.
Well, let me ask you this, because that's kind of my story. Like, long story short, I had a CPA that I was using for about maybe 8 or 9 years. He was a small town little CPA, and I remember reading your book. Maybe 2 years ago, a friend of mine named Mike told me about it. Came out. I checked it out. It's hard to keep up with all the newest, latest, and greatest books, right? And I'm reading your book, and I'm like, this is good. Nugget here, nugget there. And then I forget where, but you were talking about the different levels of tax professional help, right? You had this spectrum, right? You were talking about there's the H&R Block folks, the corner store guy. Then there's maybe the small town CPAs, and there's the big 3 or big 4 CPA firms. And then there's maybe more of I don't know how you would describe them, like an elite status CPA, somebody who is extremely passionate. He's very knowledgeable. I'm going to put you guys in this group. I don't know how you guys would give the moniker. But my CPA actually fired me about 18 months ago. He was 65, 70 years old. Nice guy, but he had told me the year or two before, he's like, I'm going to retire here soon. Start looking around. I didn't look around because, I just figured he would keep doing my taxes. Well, my lawn and landscape company doubles, then it doubles again in the last 3 or 4 years. I start this YouTube hustle, and it starts to bring in a couple bucks. And, last year we had 15 1099s, and my CPA is or 2 years ago, he's like, what are you doing? I'm like, I don't know. I have no idea. I made this pool. I put 15 little garden hoses in it. Well, now they're all turning into little fire hoses, and the pool's filling up, dude. I don't know what to do. I've never made this much money in my life with both businesses. And it was just getting way over his pay grade. And I remember reading your book, and I'm like, dude, I need somebody who knows what the heck they're doing. Somebody that can keep up with me, something that can keep up with the amount that we're making, not throwing my other guy under the bus. Can you elaborate a little bit more on that, about the difference with what you're going to get in H&R Block versus some of the guys that you have access to in your network?
So it's who do you go to for heart surgery? Do you go to a cardiothoracic surgeon, or do you go to a chiropractor? Right? H&R Block or corner tax people, and I don't mean to throw H&R Block under the bus. Actually, we have a member who their father owns H&R Blocks.
Oh,
okay.
Cool.
So they're actually, they're right for the right person. So,
right.
So those their primary clientele are employees.
W-2s.
right? They're W-2 employees. That's great. You're a W-2 employee. Highly recommend, you keep your expenses down and you go to a corner, somebody like that, or even, do it online, whatever.
Mm-hmm.
But once you become a business owner, life completely changes.
Mm-hmm.
So you really have to have because taxes become a much bigger issue for you, and there's a lot more opportunity. See, the problem with employees is, since 2017 especially, there's like nothing available for employees in the tax law, very little. Whereas if you're self-employed, you've got huge tax reduction opportunities. So now you need somebody, and here's the big key. I think the difference is, are you working with somebody who's afraid of taxes and afraid of the IRS? Are you working with somebody who says taxes are the greatest thing since sliced bread because there's so much we can do to reduce them?
Sure.
I mean, how much fun is that? I mean, this is creative. And it's not that it's creative from a cheating standpoint. It's not like 2 + 2 = 5, right?
Right.
It's creative from the standpoint of understanding that there's all these opportunities in the tax law, and all we have to do is find out which ones apply to you. Right. So that's why, to me, you find a tax professional who looks at taxes from a positive viewpoint instead of being afraid. So many tax people are scared to death of the IRS.
Yeah.
Seriously, if your accountant, your tax person is afraid of the IRS, you need to say next.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Mm-hmm.
You need to upgrade, because why would you go to somebody who's afraid of a government worker? Think about it.
Right.
You're afraid of a government worker. People go to the IRS. These are not your A students.
Right.
They're not your B students.
Yep.
Okay. The A students go to the Big Four, and then they end up in their own firm. That's where the A students go. The B students go to these big firms that are like, they remind me of eating at the Cheesecake Factory, right? You get a whole lot of food, lots of calories for a low price, and it's consistent, but there's nothing spectacular.
Sure.
Okay.
Sure.
So that's not bad. If that's what you want, that's where you should go. But our firms, so our 35 member firms, which you're a client of one of them, our 35 member firms, they're all about, how do I do more for my client? How do I get them to pay less tax?
Mm-hmm.
And who do you want on your team? I mean, you want an advocate. Can I give you a quick example?
Sure.
So a few months ago, I get the flu, and I end up in the hospital in the emergency room, and they look at me and they say, "Yeah, you got the flu. Go home." So I go home, and about 3 hours later, I call my doctor, and she says, "You got to go back to the hospital." So I go back to the hospital. They do these tests, and they're about to send me home. And I said, no. I mean, I was in so much pain. I am not leaving. So I get my doctor on the phone. Okay. She talks to the doctor at the hospital, and they admit me. Fast forward 4 hours. So I had an advocate. Okay. 4 hours later, the doctor who was going to send me home comes to apologize, because what I learned a day later is that had I gone home, I could have easily have died.
Wow.
So you have to have an advocate. You say it's not life or death, but it's life or death for your business.
Sure.
So don't you want to have an advocate? It's like right now, and we'll talk about this, I know, later in the show about the CARES Act, but there's these loans and these grants, and you're going, who do I go to? Who's going to understand this stuff?
Right.
Who's going to actually be my advocate with the bank? Because the banks are being horrible about this stuff.
Right.
These loans. I mean, terrible. Who am I going to talk to? I'm going, all of my clients, I've actually got them all lined up. They're all set. They're done. They've made their applications. They're all good to go. Well, not because I know everything, but the thing about a good CPA is it's not just how much they know, it's who they know.
Right. Well,
and so
go
I
ahead.
have all these contacts that I can send people to that, you know what? Your average person can't send you anywhere.
Well, and dude, I just got to be honest with you. That's like when you're trying to build your team of your company. Like you went back full circle to the landscaper guy. Like most of us, we're really passionate about mowing grass and doing landscaping. Like we can lay stripes, we can prune, we can lay mulch. That's what we do. That's my business. I love being outdoors, working my skill of making landscapes beautiful. what I didn't imagine 12, 14 years ago was I run a real business and I need to put together a team.
Right.
Robert Kiyosaki, you, Garrett, everybody, you guys always talk about you got to build a team on the back end that supports the actual business. So maybe you're not an accounting person. Maybe you're not a bookkeeping type person. You got the shoebox full of receipts. That was me just a handful of years ago, admittedly. And I just knew that if I'm going to continue to build this skyscraper, I can't build it on popsicle stick foundations. Like it's not going to work. And 3 years ago, I started putting pressure on this foundation. I'm like, look, we got to do some construction now, or if we don't, like this building can only get so high. I can only build this house, this building in this analogy, so big. And it took a lot of I'm just gonna be honest. It took a lot of teeth pulling. It took a lot of me getting organized, developing new skill sets, new language. Right? I went through your WealthAbility program, and I was like, oh my God, like I thought I knew. And then you get around somebody who knows, you know what I'm saying, Tom? And you realize you have no idea.
Right. Well, it's like, we always say in our business, the more you know, the more you realize you don't know.
Sure. Well,
right?
and then as I'm trying to communicate to my CPA, Michael, he's like asking me questions, and I'm like, Michael, I have no idea what you're talking about. And he goes, well, you need to read this, and this, and catch up with this article, because the velocity of which we can communicate to each other is only going to benefit me as he helps me navigate through these waters of my tax and wealth strategy. And so, here's what I'll say too, is that if you have no idea what's going on with your taxes, or, you know, you were using a corner store, franchise, that's okay. That's okay. It's not the end of the world. The bottom line is that the reason we do this podcast and all this kind of content is help you guys. I'm a Michigan guy, Tom, so we talk hockey, and Wayne Gretzky, so skate to where the puck is going to go. You have to pay attention to these things as your company grows, that you need to build a team, a bookkeeper, a CPA, accounting, payroll companies. Like all these things help you grow your company, and then you can go do your high-end skill set and high-end revenue income producing skill, like landscaping or running your business or selling accounting services. You know what I mean, Tom? So that's just one thing I wanted to cover. I was like, well, a lot of folks, Tom, they listen to my content and they're like, well, I already have a CPA. I already have a small person. How do they know that they're getting the best tax advice though? How can they vet, or how can they know that they can trust their person?
It's actually really simple.
Mm-hmm.
How often does your accountant call you and ask you questions?
Mm-hmm.
Because the chief role of an advisor is to ask questions. It's not to answer questions. Okay. Imagine this. Imagine that you go to the doctor because you're not feeling well. Maybe you have a dry cough. Just saying. Okay. So you go to the doctor because you're not feeling well.
Mm-hmm.
And imagine that you have to ask all the questions to the doctor. And you have to know how to diagnose. And all you're going to ask him is, you're going to say, okay, now I've asked you all these questions. What prescriptions should I take? Compared to, you go to the doctor and you say, my throat hurts.
Mm-hmm.
Now the doctor starts looking in your throat, asking you questions. How long has this been going on? You know, have you noticed? Have you had a temperature? Are you coughing anything up? I mean, they're asking all these questions, right? Because the doctor, in that 15 minutes you have with the doctor, 14 minutes is going to be the doctor asking you questions. Now, let's say you got a CPA who's your financial physician, right? Your financial physician. And you go to your financial physician and you have to ask them the questions. You don't think that's a problem?
It's a red flag.
Shouldn't they be spending? I mean, think about when you first started with Michael, right?
Mm-hmm. You
first start with the CPA in the WealthAbility Network. And what did he do? He started asking you questions, didn't he?
By the grace of God, I felt so embarrassed and so inadequate, but because he was pressing me, he's like, what about this? And I would give him soft shoe answers, and he was like, that's not going to cut it. And
exactly.
Mm-hmm.
So here's the thing. So it's the skill set of the CPA is asking the right questions.
Sure.
That's the primary skill set of a CPA. If your CPA is not asking you the questions and you feel like, I'm always the one calling my CPA, they're never calling me, I'm never asking, I have to ask all the questions, I have to do all the research, I'm going, then why are you paying them? Why? If you had to do that with a doctor, you'd get a new doctor in a heartbeat. You wouldn't even think twice about it.
Well, sure, but
okay. What if you couldn't get a hold of your doctor? My wife literally had a doctor she couldn't get a hold of. My wife's an asthmatic, so that's a big issue for her.
Sure.
Okay, she couldn't get a hold of the doctor. She had to let the doctor go. Well, think about this. What if you can't get a hold of your CPA? Right now, we're in a crisis right now. We've got a loan program going on called the Paycheck Protection Program.
Mm-hmm.
We have potential unemployment insurance for independent contractors, okay, who can't work right now. We have all these benefits right now. What if you call and you can't get a hold of them?
Right.
What if they're not the ones telling you, oh, by the way, I've read the bill and here's what you can do, or here's where you need to go to get more information.
Sure.
What is? I mean, to me, it's like it's a travesty.
Well,
this is the time you need. You don't want triage with your CPA. That's not what you're looking for. You're looking for somebody who's got a ventilator. Who's going to take care of you and ask you that question, so you never get on the ventilator.
Sure.
Right?
Sure.
I mean, I don't mean in any way. I'm not in any way saying that to talk about the physical side of this. I'm talking about the financial side of this, because the financial crisis, by the way, is going to last a lot longer
mm-hmm.
than the health crisis. And the financial crisis it's not just a world financial crisis or a U.S. financial crisis. The financial crisis going on right now is a personal financial crisis.
Sure.
And it's a situation where, what is your personal economy? How is your personal economy going to go hold up
mm-hmm.
during this time period?
Well, and one thing I want to just piggyback and to echo what you said that I've been super impressed with, and this isn't a plug for WealthAbility or your CPA firms. Like we're going to give a lot of really good, valuable content. We already have, hopefully, and I know we're going to talk about the CARES Act. But I will just say that my old CPA, Tom, I didn't talk to him, but once a year at like January 25th, if you know what I'm saying, the following year after the previous season had already wrapped up, which is not good. Like, you want to talk about playing your taxes defensively versus offensively. For example, and it's okay if you're here right now. Like this is where I was just a few years ago. But if you're talking to your CPA January 30th of 2020, and you're trying to take care of your 2019 taxes, Tom, like what's the likelihood of you having any tax strategy or playing offense? Can you weigh in on how that works?
It's a little hard
mm-hmm.
to fertilize your lawn after it's grown.
Sure, exactly.
And that's what you're doing. You're saying, okay, now it's that year's passed, and now we're going to all of a sudden take care of something that's in the past.
Mm-hmm.
You can't solve the past. You can only solve the future.
Right. Well, and that's how with Michael that I use, we have a monthly coaching call that him and I talk once a month. We do a Zoom meeting. It's an hour. Most of the time it's about an hour. Sometimes it's 15 minutes. He's like, don't worry about anything else. Get this, and this done like tomorrow. I'm like, sir, yes, sir. Right. And that's what I need, because Tom, it's like, I've heard you use this analogy in your book, and it's a really popular one, but if you're leaving on an airplane from LA and you're going to New York and you set the GPS when you take off, but you don't look at it for 7 hours later, what's the likelihood you're going to land in New York? Maybe a 1% chance. But that's how a lot of people handle their finances. I mean, that's how I did that just a few years ago. Like I'm speaking from personal experience. But if you have a monthly coaching call, that's like your month-to-month GPS about where you're trying to have your business, your finances, and your taxes wind up by design at the end of the year. And then all you do when you really do your tax return is you cash out. Is kind of what Mike explained it to me. Can you weigh in on that? Does that make some sense?
Yeah. So let's start with the fact that you first have to have that travel plan. First of all, you have to sit down
sure
with your engineer, with your flight engineer, and discuss, where you're going to go and how you're going to get there. And you do need to set that GPS. And most people have never done that at all. Right. They're like get in the plane, take off, and say, "Ooh, this is fun." Okay. And that's it. And they have no flight plan. They have nothing. And they certainly don't have a flight engineer, which is your CPA, right? That's your
mm-hmm.
financial flight engineer. And so you have to start with that plan of action.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. We call it a tax strategy or a wealth strategy. You have to have a plan of action. And you have to know where you're, like you say, you have to know where you're going, but you also have to know where you're starting from.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, let's say that you're starting from LA, but you think you're starting from San Francisco.
Mm.
Guess what? Your flight plan is going to have a problem there, because you're going to be flying. If you're going to New York, you're going to be flying northeast, and you're going to end up in Greenland.
Right.
So you've got to know where you are, which most people don't. You got to know where you're going, and then you need that plan of action of how to get there. Well, we have a window of opportunity right now to do that plan of action. Frankly, even between now and July 15th, when taxes are due for 2019, right? We've got 3-month extension. All right. So everybody who's listening should be talking to their CPA, or if they don't have one, call us at WealthAbility. We'll get you one.
Mm-hmm.
But they should be talking to their CPA about, what do I need to do for the next 3 months? Because yes, I want to be planning for 2020. But guess what? You asked, how much can you do in the past? You would be surprised at how much we can do for the past. Mm. I can't tell you how many times I've looked at a person's situation and go, wow, if we actually have time to do this, and this, and we can reduce your taxes by 20 or 30% because we haven't filed the tax return yet. Now, filing them in a tax return, that's a whole different animal. If you've already filed your tax return, it's really tough to go back. But if you haven't filed your tax return yet, there's still an opportunity to reduce your taxes for 2019.
And that's where, with our CPA, I didn't know all this. Like I had a CPA. Like that's what I'm like screaming at the rooftop. Like I was reading your book, and I put together this list, Tom, of like, if I could interview the top 100 people on the podcast, right? My first year doing this, and it's like Robert Kiyosaki, Tom Wheelwright, Garrett. I mean, you guys were in the top 10 because like the amount of valuable information that you guys have given away freely, or in a $14.99 self-help book. You kidding me? Like it has put multiples of tens of thousands of dollars back into my checking account just in the last 12 months. I'm like, why wasn't I doing this 8-9 years ago? Like why didn't anybody tell me? Why? I'm a little bit more of the conspiracyist theory side, but we'll save that for another episode because I'm like Robert Kiyosaki. Why wasn't I taught this in high school? Why was I busy learning, the quadratic equation and tax and wealth strategy, right? So anyway, not to continue to go down that rabbit hole, but well, let me ask you this. In simple terms, you were talking about ways that you can save money and make money. Can you just cover deductions for a few minutes here? Because deductions are huge. And again, just to go full circle, you said as an employee, there's not a lot of credits and deductions really available to you. And Tom, I hear this all the time, and I know you do too. Well, tax, all these loopholes for the rich, right? All these loopholes for the rich. And when you wrote in your book, they're just legal incentives for business owners, I went, oh my God, finally something that I'm reading from a guy who understands how I believe philosophically about incentives for people who are business owners to grow the economy. Can you weigh in on that? Because I know that is one of your hot buttons.
Well, that is the hot button, right? For me, is that you hear all the time. In fact, somebody wrote a book about loopholes. People write books about loopholes. I'm going, a loophole is an unintended consequence.
Right.
Okay. So, for example, I found a couple of loopholes in the CARES Act, okay, because it was hastily put together. There are loopholes, right? They're there. Mm-hmm. But what we really want to focus on is the 99.9% of the tax law that is simply a series of incentives for business owners and investors. Mm-hmm. That's the way the tax law is written. And the reason it's written that way, I mean, literally there's 6,000 pages of tax law, and there's only 30 pages that tell you how much tax to pay.
Right.
Everything else is an incentive to tell you how to pay less tax. Why? Well, because what do business owners provide? They provide employment. Mm. Okay? They provide, it's like I was talking to my public relations person this morning. I said, so people who don't think entrepreneurs are important probably don't shop for groceries. Mm. Because your groceries are provided by entrepreneurs. The farmer is an entrepreneur. The store could be an entrepreneur, and the middleman is an entrepreneur. Mm-hmm. Okay, so you probably don't need that. You probably don't need essential services. Okay, because those are entrepreneurs. Your CPAs are entrepreneurs. I mean, most of what happens positively in the economy is because of entrepreneurs.
Mm-hmm.
So, of course, the government says, let's give entrepreneurs an incentive because we know it's risky to start a business. We know it. So let's reduce the risk. So let's take deductions as an example of a risk reduction technique, okay? Because I actually find entrepreneurship and professional investing to be the least risky of all financial enterprises. Okay, much less risky than have a single customer like being an employee. So let's say that you got here. Let's look at deductions. So tax-free wealth is all about eliminating taxes. It's not about deferring or postponing them. Okay, I'm not a huge fan of IRAs, 401ks, pension plans, profit sharing plans. And the reason is because you're really actually increasing your tax liability when you do that. So we can talk about that in a different podcast. But,
sure. I know where you're going.
But deductions, think about a deduction. So here's all a deduction is. You're spending money every day. Okay, every dollar you spend. Well, it can either be deductible or not deductible. So if it's deductible, you're not spending more money. We're not saying go spend more money. Don't go buy an SUV because for the tax deduction. That's the dumbest idea ever.
Right.
Okay.
Right.
But if you're going to go buy an SUV anyway, okay, maybe you want to make sure that you maximize your tax deduction there. Okay. And basically there's only 4 rules for a business tax deduction. Number 1, there has to be a business purpose. That's pretty easy. You got some business reason to do it. Number 2, it has to be ordinary, which means it's got to be typical for your business. Okay, it can't be extravagant.
Right.
Number 3, it's got to be necessary, and necessary means it's going to be profitable. Okay, so you're actually spending money to make money. That's the whole point of business. You spend money to make money. You don't spend money to get a tax deduction. You don't spend money for personal reasons out of your business. That is bad. I mean, I'm sure Garrett talked about that. And so it's got to be necessary, meaning it's got to be something that improves your business. And number 4, it has to be well documented. Okay. And number 4, by the way, to the IRS is like number 1 to them, right?
Sure.
They care more about documentation than they do anything else. So think about that. That means that any expense you have has the potential to be deductible. And so what we're always saying is, the question is not, is this item deductible? That's a ridiculous question.
Sure.
I don't know. The question is how to make that deductible.
Amen.
And that's what your accountant should be talking to you about is how to make expenses deductible. How do you make your travel deductible? How do you make your meals deductible? How do you make your home deductible? Right? How do you make these things deductible? And really, here's what I love. The more you make them deductible, you're following those 4 tests, right? The more you make them deductible, the more money you're going to make. Because by definition, it has to be profitable in order for it to be deductible. So the whole purpose of an expense is to create income. And the very first thing that every one of your listeners should be doing right now is they should go sit down with their accountant and say, okay, let's look at my income statement, right? Profit and loss. Which of these expenses are making me money and which of these aren't? And let's get rid of the expenses that aren't making me money. Because guess what? A, they may not be deductibles, but B, why would you spend money that doesn't make you money? So that's a very simple analysis to go through that I suggest every entrepreneur goes through at least once a month. Okay, is to you look at those financial statements, you look at your expense and you go, does this expense make me money? And if it doesn't, maybe I shouldn't be spending it.
Sure. Well, and I got a lot of guys, and I'll be honest with you, a lot of my industry starts this way: is they do cash. And if you want to maybe touch on the legal ramifications, but maybe more so obviously the accounting ramifications is that, I was just talking to somebody the other day and he's like, well, I did a coaching call with somebody and he's like, well, I'm a sole proprietor. And I said, okay, red flag number 1. So we talked about different entities and I referred him to Garrett. I said, hey, like once we hang up with this, like this week, here's your homework, not to give you marching orders, but you pay good money. Here's marching orders. And then I said, what about your deductions? What are you doing for deductions? And he goes, well, what do you mean? I like your receipts for like lawnmower blades and, 2-stroke oil and tires for your mower and, fuel for the mowers in the truck and mileage and or actual cost. What are you doing? And he goes, I don't know what you're talking about. He goes, I run everything cash and I don't save in my receipts. And I'm like, oh, wow, we have a lot of work here to do. But that's okay.
Wow.
That's how people get started in my industry like that all the time. So to go full circle with what you're just saying is there's a lot of people that want to run it as a side hustle for cash, but you don't get the benefits of deductions anyway. So maybe you can weigh in on this, Tom, but if you just would put things on the books and qualify with deductions, it would actually more benefit you than to be running it illegally.
For sure. Well, right. So first of all, understand that all income is taxable, whether it's in cash or not.
Mm-hmm.
So the fact that you're not recording it doesn't mean it's not taxable. That would be called tax evasion. That's where you get 5 to 20 years, right?
Yep.
That's where the IRS gets all over you, okay? And they're going to see you have a business license. And if you don't have a business license, you should be out of business anyway.
Mm-hmm.
But they're going to see you have a business license, and they're going to track you down. They're going to audit you, and they're going to say, okay, first thing they're going to do, by the way, is look at your bank account. And they're going to track every single dollar that goes in. Now you say, okay, but I'm just using that cash otherwise. I will tell you this. I will not do business with somebody who gives me a discount for cash because I know they're cheating. They're cheating on their taxes.
Sure.
I just won't do business with them.
Sure.
Because you know what? I pay taxes.
Yeah.
So here's the thing. To go to your point, though, you're also not getting deductions. So some of your income is going probably being taxed no matter what. Okay. And then you got getting no deductions. It's so simple. You need to keep a set of records because, by the way, the better your records, the better the information, the more successful you're going to be.
Mm-hmm.
So you need to have a bookkeeper. Robert Kiyosaki talks about that all the time. And just keep track of all your income.
Mm-hmm.
Deposit it, report it, but then also keep track of all your expenses. Now you say, okay, and I've had clients like this. They're all all contractors. And they say, well, I spend cash for this, I spend cash for this, I spend cash for this. Great. Get a receipt. You carry a phone with you. Take a picture of it.
Yep.
That's it.
Mm-hmm.
You're done.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. There are, of course, great apps that you can download that can track your receipt.
Mm-hmm.
Right? You need to write down what it's for, but just write it down. Scan. Take a picture of it or scan it in, and you're done. Then you get all that put together. Give it to your bookkeeper. Bookkeeper records it. People who have good records always pay less tax than people who don't have good records, and they get to sleep at night.
Well, sure. Well, and that right there is what I want to wrap up with on that one was you get to sleep knowing that you're not at risk for an audit, and you're not going to, go to jail. Tom, I swear to God, this was 9-10 years ago. I was 19, 20, 21, just getting my business started. And I had a client who, had 2 Escalades, nice home, the whole deal, upper middle class. And I said, what do you do? And he goes, he ran a construction business, sorta. But long story short, he was giving me advice at 19, 20, 21. He said, hey, before you're making $100,000 a year, just keep it all cash and don't report anything. And I was like, well, that's interesting advice. Swear to God, 3 years later, same guy goes to jail for 14 months for tax evasion. And I go, holy cow. But here's the deal. I absolutely could have done that. I was impressionable. I was 19, 20. I don't want to spend all this mental energy and all these fees for my CPA, right? Well, 2 things I want to talk about, and then let's talk about the CARES Act because I want to be respectful of your calendar. One thing I wanted to talk about was audits. That's a big thing. That's the elephant in the room for everybody. I know you said earlier that if your CPA is nervous, anxious, or you think he's quote unquote risky, what's your, you already know the question I'm going to ask, but what's your definition of risky or a CPA that, is uncertain? Can you weigh in on how that works too and what your thought process is?
Yeah. So first of all, thanks for the softball question.
Yeah.
So here's the way I look at it. You think about what creates risk. What creates risk is uncertainty. Mm-hmm. That's what creates risk. So it's not knowing something. And so somebody who doesn't know much about the tax law, pretty much anything they do is going to be risky, unless they're talking about 401k and funding your IRA, et cetera, right? Because they know that much.
Right.
But anything that's outside of what they know is extraordinarily aggressive and risky.
Mm-hmm.
On the other hand, if you take somebody who's really studied the law, I mean, really spends time reading the bills, I mean, like a true tax nerd
mm-hmm.
like me,
mm-hmm.
okay? So you take something like that, well, the knowledge base is so much greater that we can do a lot within that knowledge base, and it's not risky at all because we understand the law.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so the most risky CPA is the one who knows the least. I'm going to go back to landscapers. Okay, I've had landscapers from good to bad to terrible. Right?
Sure.
Okay.
Well, I'm trying to help with that.
Okay.
Go ahead.
The terrible landscaper, I'm going, they just don't know anything.
Mm-hmm.
They don't understand that you have to check things. They don't understand what they need to do. They don't understand fertilizer. They don't understand, how important it is to keep your blade sharp. I mean, they don't understand any of this stuff,
mm-hmm.
right?
Mm-hmm.
And so now, now your yard is at risk. And for some people, that's not a big deal. But for me, it's for my wife and I, it's a big deal because we have an acre of land, and our plants and everything are important to us. We care about them. We have fruit trees. That's important to us. I don't want my pomegranate tree shaved so
mm-hmm.
that I don't have any pomegranates. We love pomegranates. My wife loves pomegranates. So, it's the same idea that you reduce risk by having somebody who knows more.
Sure.
Okay. And that's fundamentally the issue.
Well, so and then, but here's how it goes full circle. Imagine this, right? I will be the firm proponent that you get what you pay for. Like you just said, and you get a lawn care guy who is the $20 lowball guy. That's kind of like a thing in my, the chuck in a truck, we call them. And you kind of get what you pay for. So sometimes you luck out because that guy doesn't know his worth yet. That's one out of 100. But here's the deal. For so many people, blue collar or even in my industry, honestly, just in the U.S. in general, they have this thought process, Tom, of save, right? Like if gas is 5 cents cheaper, they'll drive 3 miles to go to a different gas station. They'll go to Walmart. They get a little smiley face because their socks are $4.88. And we're so coupon driven, saving driven. As an entrepreneur, correct me if I'm wrong, but you want to be investment driven. You want to be ROI driven, return on investment.
Well, right. So the question is, is it an expense or is it an asset? Right. I mean, that's an asset. Is it something that you're just spending money on, or is it actually producing income? Now, as I said earlier,
yes.
Expenses should produce income. But if what you're trying to do is you're just trying to pay the least amount of possible, because it's not actually doing anything for you,
mm-hmm.
then that's what you ought to do,
mm-hmm.
right? But on the other hand, if you have a team member who actually can make you money,
mm-hmm.
let's say, for example, that you could invest $10,000 and get a 40% return on your investment, tax-free return on your investment. Most people would say, well, first of all, they wouldn't believe it. But second of all, they say, wow, if I could do that, then the first question they would ask is, well, what if I gave you $20,000? Could I get 40% on $20,000? Or could I give you $50,000, get 40% on $50,000?
So good.
Well, here's the thing. When you get advisors, particularly tax advisors, literally that's what you're talking about.
Mm-hmm.
If you spend a little amount of money, you're probably getting no return on your investment.
Mm-hmm.
But if you spend money on a good tax advisor, your return on investment should be anywhere from 20 to 50% a year.
Amen.
20 to 50% of return a year on that as a return on investment. Team members are absolutely your best investments, provide the highest returns. So that's why we always say, the most expensive words in the English language are do it yourself.
Amen.
Right? Far cheaper, far less money. I mean, I'm telling people right now, you can pay me a little bit now or a whole lot more on July 15th. You choose.
Well,
you're paying the government on July 15th instead of me now.
Tom,
you choose.
Tom,
not my choice.
Well, okay, so here's the deal. Here's my I got to give numbers because people want to know. So here's the deal. In 2019 on April 15th, I wrote a check for something, 5-digit, a big check. And I was so mad. That was after paying quarterlies. But again, this was on 2018. So I had just started working with my new CPA firm. And he's like, look, dude, we can do little this, little that, but it is what it is. This is where it's laying. And I was so mad April 15th because I was paying my quarterlies. I was paying the last year's tax bill, my federals, my states. And dude, like I drained like 20 G's in the account. And at my level, I was very, very upset, Tom. And then, so here's the deal though. My tax guy, guess what my fees were the previous year? $315 for my CPA. and the year before that, it was like $165. And how much, as a lawn landscaper, I'm getting paid $50, $100, $175 an hour to do really, really good work, like artisan, right? Like artists, like really, really high end, like 9s and 10s, right? So my CPA, I paid him $300. How much time could he devote to my taxes? But here's the deal. Everybody wants to go save, but you're not spending money in the right places. Now, I want to be wealthy. I want to retire rich. I want to be a millionaire. I have to build a team around me that's going to get me to that finish line. Now, like Tom, like I've spent $5,000 on with a friend of ours named Mark for trademarks. I've spent thousands of dollars with Garrett, thousands of dollars with you. My CPA, fives of thousands of dollars. He calls me. He's like, "Hey, we can do this, this, and this. It's $2,750 for this strategy session, but do you want to go through it?" Yes, and times 2. And so all these different things, I'm handing out money. Like when my CPA Mike was like, "Hey, this is my fees. Here's XYZ. It's gonna be $4,000 or $5,000." And I went, I didn't know what I didn't know. And I was like, "Yo, dude, like I don't know if this is like if I'm going to be a good client for you." He goes, "Well, Mr. Brian," he goes, "just based on what I'm looking at from what we can do this, and this for 2019, I can easily already see a $17,000 savings by filing, LLCs with S corps and doing this and carrying the 2." And I went, so did you want cash or credit? And or Bitcoin, right, Tom? So that's the thing. Like you can cheap out in a lot of things in life, but you're going to get what you pay for. And I would say when you're building your team and CPAs and accounting, do not cheap out. Like take care of your accountant because, Tom, you say in your books all the time, the person that you should talk most to. Sometimes it's your wife, and then the other 50% it's your accountant, right? So, well, let's do this. If you get about like just 10 more minutes, can we talk about the CARES Act and the new stimulus bill that was
that would be great.
Because I want to be respectful of your time. These are a lot of the big topical questions that we get from all the people that listen in. But can you give us the lay of the land? I know we got a 10-minute window for a 2-hour conversation, but if you want to just take it away with the CARES Act, a lot of guys are small business owners. We're independent contractors. We run small businesses, and we're getting the brunt of the storm with this economic crisis of getting shut down, right? Most of us are non-essential. All these small businesses are most at risk for going out of business. The U.S. economy or the U.S. Government, they realize this, and so they passed this massive $2.2 trillion stimulus bill. A quarter or a third of it is dedicated to small business ownership and making sure that these guys stay afloat over the next 8 to 10 weeks. So, can you weigh in for a few minutes on what the CARES Act is, who's it's for, loans, grants, tax benefits, all that mess?
Yeah, it's primarily for businesses and employees.
Okay.
So there's the two groups, right? Businesses and employees. Employees, if you're under $75,000 of income, you get this $1,200 check. If you're married, it's $2,400 if you're under $150,000, and plus you get this check for $500 for each child under the age of 17. So that's employees. Plus there's unemployment compensation that is there for employees. That's an additional on top of regular unemployment, $600 a week, right through the end of July. So you think, okay, that's employees, but what about the independent contractor? Well, independent contractor, I was just talking to somebody about this morning, actually is in the best position of anybody with respect to this CARES Act, with maybe the exception of the airlines who are getting billions and billions of dollars.
Sure.
But when you look at it, an independent contractor has choices, and they're the only ones who have choices under this act. First of all, we have this Paycheck Protection Program, okay, called PPP, and it's a loan, but it's a forgivable loan. So this is a loan you apply for with your bank. Actually, I understand that there's some new lenders coming online every day. So by the time this podcast airs, there could be more lenders that are easier to deal with than a bank, because banks are being really difficult about this. But the amount is 2.5 times your average monthly payroll. So that includes your payroll. Well, okay, so let's say you're the only employee, the only person. Well, 2.5 months of your payroll is some real money. And guess what? The government's going to forgive 8 weeks of that. Okay, now you can also use it, by the way, you don't just have to use it for payroll. You can use the money for utilities, you can use it for mortgage interest, or you can use it for rent. Okay, so there's other things you can use it for. And so for most people, for actually most employers, I think that 95% of their PPP loan is going to be forgiven.
Sure.
Now, there's another benefit for the independent contractor called the EIDL grant. EIDL grant. This is a $10,000 emergency grant. Now, you apply for it by applying for the EIDL loan, but you're probably not going to get the loan because you're probably not going to qualify for the loan. You're going to get the grant, okay? And the grant doesn't have to be repaid. $10,000.
Wow.
That's $10,000 for your business, okay, that you should be getting within a week. So this is emergency money. Now, I don't know how fast they'll get them, but it's supposed to be $10,000 within a week.
Yes.
All right. Now, there's the option if you treat yourself as an employer. But guess what? Independent contractors can choose, instead of staying in business and getting the PPP loan and the EIDL grant, they can say, well, look, I just don't have any work. I'm going to go on unemployment. An independent contractor, for the first time in history, can claim unemployment and get regular unemployment plus the $600 a month.
Wow.
So, for example, in California, that's about $4,500 a month of unemployment in California. So, if you and your spouse are both unemployed, that's $9,000 a month of unemployment compensation. I mean, it is for some people, that's more money than they would make if they were working, right?
Amen.
So you actually have to consider that. So this is where you sit down, and I got to tell you that the first person to start talking to me about this was a member of our network who you work with. Okay, and they said, "Look, we need to get on this. We need to get on this." And he'd done some research. And then I start giving them information back, and that's how we work in our network. We literally network with each other. I got a referral from one of our network members says, look, here's a consultant who can help you find the loans. And so this is the great benefit of having a network of CPA firms, is that we don't have to rely on ourselves. We get information from everybody else in our network.
Wow. And
so what you need to do right now is sit down with your accountant. Sit down with your CPA, okay? Sit down with your financial professional who's, really your financial physician, which is your CPA, and figure out, and because you need to apply this week. This is not something you wait on.
No.
Because the money is going to be gone. The reason the money is going to be gone is because companies like McDonald's qualify for this money. So there are really big companies that you think, well, it's for a small business. No. Not necessarily.
Right.
McDonald's qualifies.
Right.
Okay. Taco Bell qualifies.
And it's a big pool. So once it's gone out of this stimulus.
Well, it's a pool, and you go, well, it's a pool of $350 billion. Yeah, but it
goes quick.
That's going to go quick. I mean, think about the millions of businesses that are applying for these. If you wait, you're going to lose out. And by the way, whether you get the loan or not, whether you get the benefits or not, you're going to pay for it. Because this is not just so you know, this is not a $2.2 trillion bill. This is a $4 trillion bill. And this is going to significantly add to the deficit, and our children, grandchildren are going to be paying for it forever. Let me give you just a couple of other benefits to be thinking about.
Sure.
First of all, it allows you to withdraw from your IRA, 401k, or self-employed pension plan up to $100,000 without having to repay it for 3 years. So you effectively borrow from your IRA and never be taxed on it. Okay, if you pay it back within 3 years, well, the economy is going to be fine in 3 years. So you'll be able to pay that back. If you don't pay it back, you get to be taxed over 3 years. So a third this year, a third next year, and a third in 2022. Okay, if you decide, well, no, I'm never going to pay that back, I'm just going to keep it out, you can be taxed over that. No penalties, no interest.
Wow.
Okay, If you have a 401k, let's say you have a solo 401k plan, you can borrow up to $100,000 from that 401k. $100,000. So this is an opportunity. If you need emergency funds, I actually think a great place to go for it, as long as you are disciplined and you're going to put the money back. Okay, you don't want to just spend the money.
Right.
Okay, please don't do that.
Right.
If you're going to invest the money, fine. If you want to invest it outside of your IRA, you want to invest it in real estate, for example, because we're going to have a big sale on real estate in the next 6 months.
Sure.
Fine. Okay, then that's fine. You have to self-certify that you need the money. But the reality is everybody needs the money, right? I mean, there are very few businesses that are just thriving right now.
What do you say to somebody though? I've had a few of these where like the righteous, ness of I don't need the loan, or I'm doing okay. I get it. I've had a couple of those. Do you want to speak to that at all? Like, what if you don't need the loan?
Yeah, I was talking to a buddy of mine about that exact issue on Saturday. I had that conversation with him.
Yeah.
And he said, well, I'm doing okay. I really don't need the money. I'm going, so you understand who's paying for this, right?
Mm-hmm.
And he goes, well, yeah, you and me. I said, that's right. So you're going to pay for it.
Right.
And yet you're not willing to take advantage of what's offered to you.
Mm-hmm.
I'm going, does that sound smart to you? He says, I'll get right on it.
Sure.
Because I'm just going, look, I get it. Okay. But understand that under federal law, it's like, okay, let's take the unemployment. $600 a week. If you're in New York City, that barely covers that may barely cover your groceries, let alone barely cover your rent.
Right.
Right.
Sure.
And if you live in Laredo, Texas, that might be a whole lot of money. Right.
Mm-hmm.
But because it's federal, they have to give the same to everybody. Right. So here's the thing. We're all going to be paying for this bill for a lot of years to come. Mm-hmm. And I just, I thought about that. I have those exact same thoughts myself. I'm going, do I need this money? I'm going, I don't know if I'll need this money. That's the other question. You don't need it now. Are you going to need it in a month? You don't know.
Right.
You don't know what the economy is going to be like in a month. You don't know what it's going to be like in 3 months. This thing could last 2 years.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Then what are you going to do?
Sure.
And you're going to say, and guess what? Once this money's gone, this is never coming back. The next package they push out isn't going to be an extension of this one. It's going to be for a whole different group of people.
Sure.
So you have to understand that you have a window of opportunity, and if you don't take advantage of that window of opportunity, that's your fault. And
Sure.
don't come whining to your congressman.
Amen. Amen. What if you want to I don't know, you're not a big speculator guy, but do you feel that there might be some fallout from the ripple effect with, hey, it might be the small business owners first and then real estate second? Because I've been waiting to go shopping for 10, 12 years. I had no financial IQ, no money, no 3 C's. I had nothing in 08. I'm not, mega wealthy, or I'm not even rich, but I've learned, and I talked to a lot of people, and I'm trying to, I don't want to sound opportunistic in a pandemic, but I'm still an entrepreneur and I still want to take care of my family.
Here's the thing. It's kind of like, let's think about 2008. There's one period of time, and I think it was even less than a year, where 10 million people have lost their homes. Mm. Okay. Does that mean you don't want to be opportunistic? You don't want to buy those homes that are now owned by the bank? Well, why not? Mm-hmm. Why wouldn't you buy that home to provide housing to somebody else? Mm-hmm. Okay. Mm-hmm. So you get to choose your mindset. This is the thing. We get to choose how we think about this. Mm-hmm. And I'm not saying, go look for all the loopholes. I'm not saying don't do anything that's not moral, ethical, and legal. Amen. Okay. Please don't do anything like that. At the same time, you're going, okay, what's going to happen with real estate? Well, this is actually the next bailout. So we had this bailout, the CARES Act, was employees and employers. Mm-hmm. The next bailout is going to be multifamily housing. Mm. And the reason is because I have a friend of mine who's invested in a multifamily project in Texas. A third of the tenants didn't pay rent on April 1st.
Wow.
On May 1st, they expect it's going to be 2/3.
Wow.
So if this keeps going, now we don't know, maybe it'll be over. Mm-hmm. at the end of April. Who knows? But if this keeps going, all of those properties are going to go back to the bank.
Mm.
If they go back to the bank, who's going to manage them?
Mm-hmm.
The bank? Banks are terrible property managers.
Right. They don't want
And
them.
so, okay. So I think we're going to get a bill. This is my crystal ball here. I think we're going to get a bill before the end of April that gives some relief to the multifamily property owners.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. So I think that's going to be maybe short-term relief, but maybe 2 to 3 months of their basically their mortgages being paid.
Mm-hmm.
I think that's what's going to happen.
Wow.
Okay. Now, does that mean we're not going to still have opportunities in October, November, December? No, they're going to be people who just cannot handle and weather this crisis because they were too thin to begin with, right? They didn't have enough capitalization to begin with, and even 1 month is too much for them to handle.
Absolutely.
So there is going to be opportunity down the road. So now is the window of opportunity. You say you've got the financial education, but you've been doing this for the last few years. What about those people who don't have the financial education? Well, now's the window of opportunity to get it.
Mm-hmm.
We do, for us, our network, we do a wealth and tax strategy. It takes us 3 to 4 months, typically, to get through it. Well, so you have plenty of time. If you do this in April, you have plenty of time to be ready for October. But if you wait until October, it's going to be too late. Well, because you're not going to be ready until January, and all those the best deals are going to be gone.
100%.
So now is the window of opportunity to actually get ready, and you're not trying to take advantage of anyone except maybe the banks, right? Which I'm okay with that.
Yeah.
What you're trying to do is you're trying to build. Don't miss out again. Just like you said, you missed out in 2008. So did I. Okay, I wasn't ready either. Now's the time. Okay, am I going to miss out this time? Absolutely not. Now, let me tell you the other opportunity that's going to happen, and this is an interesting one. It will lag multifamily. It'll be commercial, and commercial real estate is going to be hit harder than multifamily. And the reason is because it's not going to get bailed out.
Right.
But here's what's going to happen. All these people right now are used to working from home. You're going to see businesses that were previously renting 5,000 square feet that are now going to rent 1,200 square feet. You're going to see a lot of occupancy in commercial real estate. So there's going to be a huge sale. Within a year, you're going to see a huge sale in commercial real estate.
Wow.
So that would be another opportunity to be looking forward to.
Wow. Well, I super appreciate the insight. Something that you had said earlier was that when we were talking about this is, you if you don't, it's not what you know, it's who you know. And from the who, you get the what. And I will say this, in the last 12, 18 months, Tom, a lot of my fans and followers and all this mess, like we have fun with it. They're all my followers are super cool and super encouraging. Like I've wanted to build and buy a home. Right now, my wife and I, we rent a nice apartment. It's a luxury apartment, which is code for, it has 2 poopers. You know what I mean? And so I wanted to go, buy a Tesla Model X for $90,000 to $100,000. I have businesses that can support, I have assets that can support that liability. But instead I'm trying to invest in my education by getting around guys like you, guys like Mike, my CPA, guys like Garrett, all these different folks where I'm trying to, I don't want to sound weird here, but I'm trying to buy access to the smartest people in the room because I want to be on the upside. I want to be wealthy. I have to get around how wealthy people think. Now, I know a lot of you guys listening, you're like, well, I run a lawn and landscape business. You might be on a mower right now. That's totally cool. I'm in the exact same boat you guys are, but there's nothing wrong with trying to set your life up and position yourself to succeed where you're not necessarily having to always be the guy on the mower. Maybe one day, and Tom, I know this is your background, maybe one day you want to have real estate with apartment buildings or commercial strip malls. Once you make the money, right, Tom, you got to do something with it. And so,
because if you don't, you're going to give it to the government.
Amen.
Okay?
Amen. That's how.
So
that's how it goes full
either
circle.
you buy an asset or build your business and don't pay tax, or you go spend the money and you waste it and you pay the government 40 to 50%. So now's the time. You're absolutely right. No, buying access. So true story. So of course you can imagine I'm personally, I actually take on 1 or 2 clients a year, but I'm not cheap.
Yeah.
Because I can afford that, right? I mean, I've got 40 years experience.
Sure.
I will honestly believe I've earned it to some extent.
Funny ad lib. I called your office and I said, I want Tom. And they told me your rates. And I said, I'll take the next guy. So I'm just having fun because I said, I'm not for Tom. So anyway.
No, and most people aren't.
Right.
But I actually had somebody, and so my rates are slightly more than my members, right?
Yes.
I mean, like 4 or 5 times
Amen.
as much.
Couple extra zeros.
Yeah, literally a couple of extra zeros.
Yeah.
So I had a doctor come to me and literally paid the fee to get access to my network, to people I know.
Sure.
And made millions of dollars from simply getting an introduction to one person I knew.
Wow. Amen.
Now, while we're doing it, we saved him $500,000 a year in taxes.
Wow.
So he
awesome.
he got all the benefits of being there, but that's not why he did it. He did it literally for access. So
sure.
You're absolutely right. I mean, getting access to people who know what they're doing and getting the education of those people is priceless. I mean, there's no way you can make as much money any way else than getting financial education.
Amen. Well, and maybe we can wrap up with that because we're going over. I want to be respectful of your time. You and I probably both get really passionate. We would talk about this for days on end, but I know your phone's probably ringing off the hook. So a couple of wrap up thoughts. One, I did buy your WealthAbility training program. I sell training programs, Tom, about how to do lawn care landscaping. I get it. I'm like, you know what? Everybody's got a training program, and but it was part of the requirement to get access to your guys' network. And I said, you know what? It was a couple bucks. It wasn't cheap. And I said, you know what? I get the hustle is what I kind of called it. But then I actually went through the whole training program because I asked Kurt, who signed me up, and I said, and I'm sure you know Kurt, and I said, Kurt, what's the fastest somebody's ever went through this? And he goes, our most stout, our most, ambitious students takes them 3 months. And I said, okay, I'll lick it in 3 weeks, right? I did not, I can't even, I don't have the vocabulary to describe how much I learned from your training program about taxes, wealth, so many different things. And I'm not going to give it away. It's, here's one thing I've learned, Tom, is that on training programs, folks can share login info. And I sell training programs, and I asked that question. I said, how do you know that people won't be stealing your programs or giving it to their buddy? And they said, well, here's the litmus. If people are giving it away, you kind of prove the point that you have really good content that people want to share. I said, okay, well, that's one oar in the water. The other oar in the water was I could give that login info away to other people. And you know what I said? Abso-freaking-lutely not. I said, because how much content, not that I was going to anyway, but I just, how much content and information I got out of your training program, I literally was like, dude, there's no way I'm giving this to anybody anytime. If they want this info, they need to pay full retail. Now, we're not going to give a plug for it.
Well, let me tell you why that's important, though, if I can.
Yeah.
It's not just important to you. We put value based on what we pay for something. Mm-hmm. Okay, so if you get something for free, you truly believe its value is zero.
Right. Sure.
Okay, so you're not going to do it. The reason we charge, for example, we charge up front for our services. Why do we do that? Because if we were to charge on an hourly basis like every other CPA, you would hesitate to pick up the phone.
Amen.
You'd never want to pick up the phone because every time I pick up the phone, I'm going to get billed.
Yep.
No. If we charge you up front, what's going to happen? You can't wait to pick up the phone. That's what we need you to do in order for you to be successful. Mm-hmm. Now, we want you to feel like, we want you to understand. Now, obviously, I know the price of my own product, and I know it's not the least expensive financial education in the world. I will absolutely tell you, though, that for what you're getting, it's the least expensive because we put everything into this. I mean, you have a year's access to 22 different courses, and these are not like YouTube videos, right? I mean, you know, this is a serious learning management system.
It's all me.
It is like high-end education. And I just want to emphasize that because I don't want anybody to take it lightly. This this education, if you do it right, will completely change your financial situation.
Mm-hmm.
It'll completely change your tax situation. And we, Kurt says we don't have anybody who's done less than 3 months. I've seen people. I actually had a client who went through the whole thing in 2 weeks.
Okay.
I mean, literally just devoured it in 2 weeks.
Sure.
And you can, as far as developing your whole strategy, that's going to take 3 months. But actually going through the education, yeah, I've had people do it pretty fast.
Wow.
But if it's 22 courses, it's about 100 hours of work.
That's crazy.
Okay, so
it is.
So you literally almost have to be full time
in
order to get it done that fast. But I just want to emphasize that this is serious education. This is not for somebody who wants to press the easy button.
Mm-hmm.
This is for somebody who wants to change their life. And if you're willing to change your life, and that is that's our only requirement to take on a client. We have no income requirement. We have no asset requirement. Our sole requirement is you have to be willing to put in the effort to change your life. If you're not, I don't care if you make $4 million a year. I'm not going to take you on as a client.
Right. Well, it's can I just speak to that? Because when my friend, my in-person friend, who's another contractor, Michael, I told him, I'm like, dude, my CPA fired me. He just laughed. He chuckled. He goes, he fired you? I go, yeah. I go, rude. And so, but honestly, looking back on it, it was the best thing that ever happened to me, because hindsight's 2020. I was like, well, I don't know what to do. Like, I don't want to start a new relationship with somebody. Like, I need somebody that knows what's going on. I need like a guy like this Tom guy that I'm reading the book of. And Mike goes, why don't you just reach out to him? And I think back then he was even like, hey, it's not him, so go ahead, Brian, take one for the team, right? And I called up and I explained my whole situation. And this isn't a sell to get you guys to work with Tom or his CPA firms. Although I'm a client, I think if you want to play big boy ball, you might want to, pick up the phone and call these guys. But I was so nervous because, I was like, I'm only making a couple $100,000 gross. Like I'm not a multimillionaire. I'm not a surgeon. I'm not Robert Kiyosaki. You know what I mean? And that's kind of the impression I had. But you guys have over delivered. I will be honest with you. You talked about one of the litmuses of what's a good CPA, Tom, was how many times your CPA calls you or emails you. I talk to my CPA, Mike, with all due respect, probably once a day. And I feel like I'm totally taking advantage of him. But he emails me every day. We talk once a week at minimum. The last 7 days, we've probably emailed 5 different times. In fact, we got to shut down the podcast here anyway, because I got a webinar at 3 with him to, like you said, take advantage of the 7A loans and get educated, and so we can get our ducks in a row. So I just want to say, if you want to plug everything really quick where people can find more information about you, if they want to go down the rabbit hole, if you want to just give everybody all that kind of info really quick.
Sure. Okay. A few quick resources. First of all, Tax-Free Wealth, my book, which is, Amazon. It's on Amazon. It's on Audible. I read the book. 15 hours of listening to my voice. If you really want to listen to my voice that long. I mean, seriously.
I listen to it once a year. I'm not kidding. It's phenomenal.
So that's a terrific resource. WealthAbility.com. WealthAbility.com. Go there and click on schedule a call. The call's free, and we will help you find a CPA. We do not charge for that service. We charge the CPA, not you, for that service. And the third one is I did a town hall that is on YouTube now about the CARES Act. And so it was about an hour and a half town hall where I spent 45 minutes describing the act and the provisions of the act, and I spent another 45 minutes asking live questions. So that is also a terrific resource if you want to learn more about the CARES Act. Just go to the WealthAbility YouTube channel.
Cool.
And I am doing updates on that on a regular basis. So we're going to post an update by the end of the day today or tomorrow. And so there's updates. The law's changing constantly. So it's not like, so what I said last week may be different than what I say this week. Just know that that's how fast things are moving right now. So
Sure.
I would say those are really the three big options: Tax-Free Wealth, WealthAbility.com, or the WealthAbility YouTube channel. I also have, by the way, a WealthAbility podcast, which
I was just going to say,
love to have everybody listen to. And I've actually been posting a lot extra podcasts.
Yeah.
Because of this CARES Act.
Episode 49 and 50, I listened to both of them just in the last couple of days. You go into depth for about a half hour, 45 minutes on each one about the CARES Act. So very, very timely info. Absolutely. Well, let me just maybe wrap up with this final thought. Maybe just kind of open mic, open forum. I had a friend. He submitted a question, and this is the only one. I think I already sent it to you, but he said, "What would the Tom Wheelwright say to his nephew who might be thinking about starting a lawn and landscape business or becoming a business owner? What's like one maybe thing that you wanted to leave our audience or something that you think would impact them over the next 10, 20 years that you would like to see people learn or value or a skill set? Anything like super critical that has changed your life or been like a guiding star?
For sure. Just remember that business is a team sport. So it's not about doing it yourself. It's all about building your team. So like you did, you found just how valuable that is when you start building the team. And, once you start getting access to us, you got access to Garrett, you got access to all these other people. Mm-hmm. And now you're building a really top-notch team where that's really what's going to help you the most. I mean, a quarterback doesn't win the game without a receiver and blockers, right? You got to have everybody on that team. So building a business is all about building the team and creating a plan of action for your business as well as for your team. And when you do that, then, your chances of success are like 100 times what they are if you just try to do it by yourself.
Gosh, so good, so good. You are the master at this, and we sincerely appreciate your time. I wish we could sign off with yours. This has been another episode where you can make way more money and pay way less tax, right? So
there you go.
I love it.
There you go. That's our slogan.
Well, Tom, I super appreciate the time more than you know. Thanks for jumping on our podcast. I know, you have no idea who I am or our little ecosystem here, but I will tell you that you're going to make a huge impact on so many different people, and I know that's something that you, Garrett, Robert, you guys are all extremely passionate about. So it's not lip service. I really do appreciate your time, but as much as I also do appreciate your time, I'm going to shut it down. That way you can get back to, putting the world out with all their fires. Fair enough. So thanks again for joining us on the show.
Great. Thank you.
All right. We'll see you guys. Hey, thanks so much for joining the Fullerton Unfiltered podcast, guys. We'll look forward to catching up with you guys on the next one.
Thanks for taking the time to listen to the Fullerton Unfiltered podcast with Brian Fullerton. We hope you enjoyed this production. If so, please consider leaving us a 5-star review for the show. While the techniques and ideas presented here are designed to help you grow a more successful and profitable business, no one can guarantee these results for you. We want to emphasize that entrepreneurship is not easy, and the ideas presented here are just the opinions of Brian Fullerton and his respective guests. No one can guarantee success for you. That being said, we hope the ideas presented here help you and motivate you to go on out there and crush it with your own business.
Fullerton Unfiltered Podcast.
Thanks for listening, and we hope to see you on the next episode.